This is americasdemocrats.org, the weekly netcast for stand-up Democrats. I'm your host, Jim Cuddy. Law professor and civil rights historian Michael Higginbotham reflects on racial turmoil in America. Housing expert Andre Shashaty says that in half a century, conditions have not improved very much in terms of affordable housing for minorities. And Bill Press talks with Tom LoBianco of CNN's Digital Politics about the debating Republicans. Are you tired of Tea Party Republicans and Rush Limbaugh dominating the airwaves? Do you want the facts you won't get on Fox or even on CNN? Then stay tuned. Our sponsor, 21st Century Democrats, works hard to get everyday Democrats involved in returning our party to its roots and to success at the ballot box. Sit back and listen, then stand up and fight. And follow 21st Century Democrats on Facebook for all the latest progressive news. We're glad you can join us. Baltimore law professor Michael Higginbotham reflects on the racial turmoil breaking out again in America and says black lives have always mattered, except to the Supreme Court. And we say hello to Michael Higginbotham, law professor at the University of Baltimore, specializing in constitutional law and human rights. He is also the author of a book called Ghosts of Jim Crow, Ending Racism in Post-Racial America. Michael Higginbotham, thanks so much for joining us today on americasdemocrats.org.
My pleasure.
As a leading legal figure in Baltimore and a scholar in the area of race relations, can you tell us how the city's doing in the aftermath of the death of Freddie Gray?
Well, I have to put on my medical doctor's hat. Basically, the city is in recovery. As many people know, we've gone through a traumatic experience. We're not healed just yet, but things are getting better. And we, like many places around the country, we need to fix the problem.
Does a new police chief and the prospect of a new mayor in themselves improve things?
I think that it improves things, completely fix the problem. Leadership can make a difference. They can find issues, they can identify the problems, they can galvanize people to try and come up with solutions. But the bottom line is we need to address the problem. And we've got over-policing, we've got disparate sentencing, we've got bad police practices, we've got a drug problem, we've got high unemployment, and we've got challenges in public education. We need to address all of those issues, and if we do, we can go a long way to fixing the problem.
But how does one reconcile a community's need for protection from crime with the need for police to treat the community and perpetrators with more respect?
Well, that's a good question. But from my standpoint, they're not really in conflict. I think both of those things can be done simultaneously, and I think that's actually the ideal situation. You want to have excellent police protection. You also want to have respect from the community, and they can both be done at the same time. They can both be done effectively, and in my view, that's what needs to occur. They both need to be done.
We're speaking with Michael Higginbotham, law professor at the University of Baltimore and also the author of the book called Ghosts of Jim Crow, Ending Racism in Post-Racial America. The Black Lives Matter slogan and the protests at campaign events, do they help or harm the goal of improved community policing?
Well, I think the Black Lives Matter movement begun shortly after the Trayvon Martin incident several years ago. I think they're part of the solution, not part of the problem. They've certainly drawn attention to problems in policing in our urban areas. They've certainly captivated an audience, and they've also, I think, helped to focus attention on this difficult situation. Black lives, and I like the title because Black lives have always mattered in this country. I mean, they've mattered from one of the founding fathers, George Wythe, who in 1806 made a trial court decision where he said all individuals, irrespective of race, are entitled to the presumption of freedom. Doesn't matter how you look, doesn't matter what color you are. Everyone is entitled to constitutional protection in the presumption of freedom. And I think from then on, Black lives have mattered to many individuals. Unfortunately, they haven't mattered to Supreme Court justices like in the 1986 McCleskey versus Kemp case, where Warren McCleskey argued that a disparate impact of 4 to 1, if he's black and his victim is white, he's 4 times as likely to get the death penalty. And 5 justices on the Supreme Court basically said that's not enough. That doesn't cause us to identify an equal protection violation. You've got to have much more. And 4 justices in dissent, including Justice Marshall, who in my view was the conscience of the American judiciary because he had actually lost a client, one of the only justices to have lost a client to the government, to capital punishment. 4 justices in dissent said, we think the majority has a fear of too much justice. What would be so wrong with accepting McCleskey's argument that if he's 4 times as likely to get the death penalty because he's black and his victim is white, what's wrong with accepting that? And the dissenters said the majority seems to have a fear of too much justice. And so I think it mattered. Black lives mattered to those 4 justices in dissent. I only wish that it had mattered to the 5 justices in the majority.
Mm-hmm. What's your view of the opinion of some police officers and FBI Director James Comey that as a result of all the turmoil in race relations, some white cops are not anxious to enforce the law as much as they used to?
I hope that's not the case, and I'm disappointed that Director Comey and others think that might be occurring. I think if you look at the criticism is of bad cops. It's of bad police practices. It's not a criticism of all police officers, and it's not a criticism of all actions. And so I think first and foremost, police officers need to understand that. They need to understand that, racial minorities are the same as everyone else in our society. They want the same things. They want to feel safe. They want police officers to respect them. They want to, have crime reduced. They don't want to be victims of crime. And so I think that's important. On the other side, it's also important for racial minorities to understand that, it's a very difficult job that police do today. And mistakes will occur. My concern is that when I look at, what's been happening for many, many years, my concern is that there doesn't seem to be any consequences from mistakes occurring or consequences to bad police officers when they do bad things. And so I would hope that everyone, police as well as members of minority communities, could agree that being a police officer is a difficult job, but that does not excuse bad practices, bad behavior, or mistakes. And when those occur, there must be consequences. And unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be. Too many police officers seem to be, when bad practices occur, when mistakes happen, there doesn't seem to be any repercussions to that.
Mm-hmm. What do you make of the increase in crime and the decrease in arrests in Baltimore since Freddie Gray's death? Do you think that there is some relationship to that previous question as far as that goes, or is this just coincidental?
It's hard to tell, and I hate to kind of venture a guess without having some more concrete evidence.
Sure.
I think there are suggestions that that's the initial results suggest that. But in my view, there are various ways to decrease crime, and I think recently we've focused too much on the police practices and too little on the other ways that we can reduce crime. And to me, a focus on education, a focus on job training and job creation will also help to reduce crime. And I think we've just focused too much on the stop and frisk, the various other practices that have resulted in strained community relations recently.
You know, the other thing that I would like to see, too, would be more stories about a lot of those good cops that are out there in the communities that are talking to people, that are trying to make a difference, rather than just focusing on those few that do make those egregious mistakes. That's another part of it, too. I mean, the media could help in this matter.
Mark? I agree 100%, and I think I have seen some stories. About positive things going on with the police and community relations, and I agree. I think all sides need to be told, and certainly most of our police officers are good police officers. Most of them are trying to do a good job, and those stories need to come out.
Now, Martin O'Malley was mayor of Baltimore from 1999 to 2007 and claimed credit for tougher policing and a reduction in crime. Is his record, though, something that could hurt his presidential campaign? I think it has hurt. I think it has hurt his campaign, particularly with minority voters. His record in Baltimore as mayor, I think, has been very controversial with respect to police practices, and I think that has hurt him with minority voters. I also think, though, that what's hurt him more is Bernie Sanders, as an alternative to Hillary Clinton. O'Malley has to show voters, I think, not only that, he's a fighter for education and tough on crime, but he also has to show, I think, voters that he's a fighter for economic fairness and against racial injustice. And I think that's the part of his mayoralship that I think a lot of minority voters have questions about. Okay. Michael Higginbotham, law professor at the University of Baltimore, author of the book, Ghosts of Jim Crow, Ending Racism in Post-Racial America. Michael, thank you so much for your time with us today. We look forward to having you back again soon. My pleasure. This is AmericasDemocrats.org, the weekly netcast for stand-up Democrats. We want you to sit back and listen, but we need you to stand up and fight. Do you want to get involved and help get our party back to its roots and to success at the ballot box? You can make your contribution to Democrats for America's Future and help us keep this show going and to elect Democrats who will stand up for democratic principles. Go to americasdemocrats.org and click on Donate at the top of the page. This is americasdemocrats.org, the weekly netcast for stand-up Democrats. Expert Andre Shashaty looks back on 50 years of efforts to make housing affordable to people in urban areas. And it's not a great view. More on that in just a moment. Right now, we turn to Jim Hightower, America's #1 populist, for his common sense commentary.
Gosh, Americans don't need enemies like China when we've got protectors like Obama. In his pitch to get us to swallow that glob of global corporate greed known as the Trans-Pacific Partnership, President Obama has resorted to a tacky bit of China bashing. He recently crowed that, quote, under this agreement, we, rather than countries like China, are writing the rules for the global economy. This backhanded slap at a major trading partner is meant to tell us that big bad China would have written global trade rules to hurt the American people. Aside from the fact that we and our allies would never agree to such biased rules, even if the Chinese were stupid enough to propose them, Obama's assertion contains two self-destructive bombshells, both tucked inside the word we. First, if okayed by Congress, this TPP scam would offshore a whole new round of America's middle-class jobs, hold down or even lower U.S. wages, flood our market with unsafe imported food, free Wall Street banksters from oversight, and empower global corporations to use private trade tribunals of corporate lawyers to usurp our people's sovereignty. How embarrassing that our own president would claim credit for doing such explosive damage to the American people. I'm guessing that even China would not have done worse. Second, Obama's entire TPP charade is blown to bits by his assertion that we are writing the rules. Who's we? Were you consulted? Did you even know that a tiny group of unelected people have been meeting in secret for 7 years to write rules for us? In fact, only about 600 corporate executives and lobbyists were allowed to be at the table, writing rules to benefit themselves at our expense. This is Jim Hightower saying it's a disgrace that Obama is fronting and even lying for these self-serving, kleptocratic corporate powers.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
This is americasdemocrats.org, the weekly netcast for stand-up Democrats. Andre Shashaty has been working in the housing field for half a century and says things are not looking up. And he explains the new phenomenon of zombie foreclosures. And we say hello to Andre Shashaty, president of the nonprofit Partnership for Sustainable Communities, also the author of a new book, Masters of Inequality, 50 Years After Our Cities Burned, Why American Society is Still So Divided, and What We Must Do Now to Avoid Chronic Conflict. Andre Shashaty, thank you so much for joining us today on americasdemocrats.org.
My pleasure.
So 50 years ago, this past summer saw the first of urban riots in Watts. If we look at cities today, economic conditions haven't improved much for minorities. What are the big reasons for that?
Well, that's a little bit out of my area of expertise because my focus has been on housing and urban policy. But there is definitely a connection between housing and urban policy and economic conditions. It's not a connection that gets a lot of attention. The fact that the Great Migration brought a lot of low-income black families into northern and western cities created a challenge for planners and city leaders because the people needed jobs, they wanted jobs, and of course many of those jobs were farmed out, went overseas, and then there was the white flight that took people out of the cities, affluent people left the cities, and jobs left with them. So you ended up with the pattern creating people living where there weren't jobs, and that has continued, and many of the sociologists who do the empirical research have found that the number of children growing up in areas of concentrated poverty is increasing and has been increasing for some time. And that is not a way to achieve economic success. They grow up in areas with bad educational systems, with a lack of jobs, with a lot of unemployed people, and it does not do anything to help their prospects for getting a good education and getting a good job. So the things are inextricably connected.
Your book chronicles failures of desegregation in housing. Is integration even desirable, or is it a matter of economic equity for minorities, regardless of where people live?
Well, that's a great question because people who support greater opportunities for minorities differ on these things, and frankly, the housing thing does get discounted to some degree. It doesn't seem to carry as much weight with liberals, but it should, because the opportunity for young people to grow up in communities with good schools and safe streets is critical to their ability to advance and have success in life. It is absolutely essential that they not be restricted in where they can live and that they not be confined to areas of concentrated poverty. Now, I personally think that it also has a great bearing on race relations in general and the opportunity for people to live together. And I think Martin Luther King said it extremely well in 1962 when he said he was convinced that men hate each other because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. And they don't know each other because they don't communicate with each other. And they don't communicate with each other because they are separate from each other. And that's basically his way of saying that he went to Chicago after he won voting rights in the South, and he went to Chicago to win housing rights. And he was right to do that. It was essential to break down those barriers, to bring people together and give everyone equal opportunities to access the things that are part of a good, healthy community.
What was the effect of the Great Recession and the bursting of the housing bubble on the movement for affordable housing? And perhaps within the answer, you can also explain exactly what are zombie foreclosures.
Well, of course, zombie foreclosures are much more interesting because everybody loves zombies, and but people living in poor neighborhoods don't particularly like the kind that involve dilapidated old houses that are falling apart and are basically death traps. They catch on fire, they're vandalized, they can become occupied by homeless people or drug dealers. And a zombie foreclosure is very simply a place where a bank has started the process and put the owners on notice that they can't live there anymore and they don't own it anymore, but the banks didn't follow through. So they're kind of in limbo. The bank is not really taking control and taking charge and made the property nice, and the owners, of course, are on their way out as soon as the foreclosure is complete. So they have absolutely no incentive to do anything to keep up the house. So the short answer is that the recession made housing more affordable, but it also brought decay and blight to many communities, and of course, blacks were victimized by predatory lending, and they've suffered the consequences more than most people of similar incomes.
Bernie Sanders has said that discrimination in America is less about race and more about class and income. Do you agree with that?
On the surface, yes, but there's a subtext to every discussion about this when it comes to housing. Communities always say, we're not discriminating by race, we just have expensive housing. Well, if you study your history of community development and land use and zoning, you know that was all grounded in the idea of let's get away from the inner city and let's get away from the people of color. And the more expensive housing is, the fewer of them can live here. Everybody knows that. And in the debates about affordable housing, the less sophisticated who don't know how to couch their terms say so quite clearly that they don't want certain kinds of people to live in their communities. So there's two levels to that.
If it's a good idea to revitalize cities to provide people with more jobs, and it seems that would make sense, how can redevelopment occur without destroying affordable housing? Is there a middle ground somewhere?
Well, there's certainly ways to do it, but they're challenging. They require a great deal of political leadership. They require money. They require land use policies that make more sense than most of the policies currently in effect. And very few people consider the issue that important to put in that much effort. It's really hard to do. Can be done, but it's not being done on any scale.
Okay. Andre Shashaty, president of the Nonprofit Partnership for Sustainable Communities, author of the new book, Masters of Inequality, joining us today on americasdemocrats.org. Andre, thank you so much for your time. We look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thanks very much.
You are quite welcome. And this is americasdemocrats.org, the weekly netcast for Stand Up Democrats. We want you to sit back and listen, but we need you to stand up and fight. Help get our party back to its roots and to success at the ballot box. Make your contribution to Democrats for America's Future to keep this show on the air and help elect stand-up Democrats. Go to americasdemocrats.org and click on Donate at the top of the page. This is americasdemocrats.org, the weekly netcast for stand-up Democrats. And now Bill Press talks with CNN's Tom LoBianco about the Republican presidential candidates.
Of course, I made my start here on CNN when I came back to Washington in 1996. So six good years at Crossfire and the Spin Room with Pat Buchanan and Bob Novak and Mary Madeline and Tucker Carlson and John Sununu and who else? Who am I forgetting now? At any rate, a great crowd, and so it's always good to welcome a fellow colleague from CNN to our studio, as we do this morning, Tom LoBianco, part of the crack political team covering the 2016 races at CNN. Hello, Tom. Welcome. Nice to see you.
Bill, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Is my picture still up in the lobby?
Where's the Bill Press shrine in CNN?
Of the CNN building. When you walk in, is there a quote, one of my quotes on the floor of the lobby?
When I get those official corporate emails, your photo's always at the top. So.
Yeah, nice. The matron saint.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the Bill Press alumnus here at the show. I think some people at CNN might not welcome me back. I'm not sure. At any rate, you join our team here. Peter Ogburn and Jamie Benson. Hello, guys.
Here we are. Here we are.
Yes, indeed. Ray Rogers. She's here to take your calls. 866-55-PRESS. Watch out, man. She's tough, too. Yeah. She doesn't like what you have to say. Yeah. But she's also, she's our filter, so you got to pass through. Ray Rogers to get on the air, and Cyprian Bolding is our videographer, keeping us looking good, Tom, on the TV side. So
thank you, Cyprian.
I yesterday pointed out that there was something I thought illogical about this idea that you go back and kill baby Hitler. Right? First of all, time travel, more than illogical. Right? Yeah. But,
by the way, this is, if I could just point out, this is amazing about the debate with Fox, right? Like when you don't have a very lively, frankly, interesting debate, we go back to talking about baby Hitler after the debate, right? Like nothing huge came out of the debate that we should be talking about.
Well,
so we're back to talking baby Hitler.
And how disappointed I was, I don't know about you, that was not the first question. I wanted that to be the first question. Right. Would you? Sure. Would you, right?
In every prep book, there it is right there, the baby Hitler question.
Yeah.
Are you ready for that?
Yeah. Hell yeah.
You gotta nail that one. Right? Hell yeah, I'd kill baby Hitler.
I pointed out there was a contradiction, however, in talking about killing baby Hitler as opposed to, and this question came up to Ben Carson yesterday on the road from this blog.
PFT commenter hit him with it. Yeah, PFT commenter, the greatest tweeter alive.
All right. So he caught Ben Carson. Here he is.
As perhaps the most anti-Hitler, but also the most anti-abortion candidate, would you be in favor of aborting baby Hitler?
Oh my God.
I'm not in favor of aborting anybody. Not even Hitler. Okay.
Do you think that you were let out?
Pro-Hitler.
You hear that? That woman was saying, "Oh my God!
Oh my God!" That's the greatest.
I mean, I was saying yesterday. I mean, so why, if you want to kill the baby, just pay the mother to have an abortion, then you wouldn't have baby Hitler. No, Jeb Bush wouldn't go along with that. So these guys.
Well, this is the test, right? I mean, what we do is we come up with hypotheticals.
Yeah.
Some people look to the 3 a.m. call, all right, and other people look to Wilder hypotheticals.
Isn't that the time for Jeb Bush to say, "Can we talk about a serious issue rather than answering the question?"
I'm actually surprised. I mean, you see some incredible deflections, and I was surprised those weren't batted back. But Carson was right on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wouldn't abort anyone. Yeah, right. He can have it both ways, I guess. So, Tom, I was working away last night, writing a column about what I think is this insane idea by Donald Trump that we're going to actually be able to deport 11 million people who may have come here, did come here illegally, but are paying taxes and have jobs and all that kind of stuff, whatever. And I look, and here the story that I'm working on is written by you on Donald Trump and his deportation force. Really? Where's that? How are we going to? Where are they going to come from? How are we going to build a deportation force? And is this at all realistic?
Well, I think this is interesting because, obviously this builds out of the debate, and this it shows where we are in the campaign now. The fourth Republican debate, it's a seemingly endless list. What's happening now is we're starting to get down to the specifics. All right, the mudslinging is not over, but it's decreased. No. And, he talked a little bit about this before.
This debate was mainly about substance and specifics.
Right, and he talked a little bit about this earlier, over the summer when he was, the insurgency.
Right.
Yeah, sure. He did say that he would triple the border force. That's, those are some specifics, but we're also starting to move into this point where it's like, okay, you haven't fallen off. You're not just a summer fad. What will you do? Mm-hmm. And that's the question. And of course, Morning Joe came, got him on air with that, and that was the question there. Okay, how will you actually do this?
But he didn't hesitate. I mean, he picked up that term that Mika Brzezinski asked him, "Are you going to have some massive deportation force?" And he made it his own, right? I think he was glad to hear almost a phrase that he could use.
It's sharp.
But I mean, seriously, how realistic is it?
Well, I mean, you got to figure out the budgeting, right? I mean, if you look at all this, right? I mean, it's everything comes down to what is possible, and I hate to pull back into the greater context of the campaign. We were seeing this on the Democratic side, seeing this on the Republican side, where it's okay. How do you actually do this stuff? All right, okay, let's give you the White House. All right, how? And he hasn't delivered up an awful lot of specifics just yet, but we do have some idea.
Well, okay, I think when we talked a little bit about this show, I mean, I did a little math last night on let's say we're going to use buses, right, for these 11 million people. Standard Greyhound bus, 55 seats. 200,000 people. 11 million people. You need 200,000 buses. The entire Greyhound bus fleet is 1,230. So we're kind of, maybe, as I said, maybe Mexico will send the buses and pay for them. Maybe that's Donald Trump's plan. But so let's just accept that it's going to be difficult to pull off logistically. But what about politically? I mean, is this a winning issue in November?
Well, which November, right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Now we're
right. I'm talking about not in the general election.
I'm only being partially facetious, though. I mean, because now he, that field like that, he only has to get to a certain level. As long as George Pataki and Jim Gilmore stay in, drawing off 0.5% each. I mean, that's, you only need 28% in these early states.
Yeah.
So it works now.
You're absolutely right to make that distinction. But generally, you would think the party would want to nominate somebody in the primary who could win in the general. Now, also generally, I guess you would say the party would not have a clown as the front runner, but they kind of do. So I mean, is it possible that the Republican Party could take this all the way to the general election?
Well, I mean, that is the question, right? Who is the nominee? I used to work for the Washington Times about 6 years ago, and we cover some of these issues. And what's remarkable to me is how strong the feelings are about immigration and how strong it is with the core group. I mean, the feeling hasn't changed. Perhaps the width of the base, if you will, is expanded and shrank and whatnot. But the passion is there. You can
see that. I mean, he is. Look, 100. I think the day of the debate was 114 days, so 116 days. He's either been number one or down by 1 point or something. Yeah, with this position, with this issue.
Well, it's remarkable too, right? I mean, look, he's softening his tone, but it'll still come back to the thing that made him famous, his first hit. Immigration, the thing that shot him to the top, arguably.
Why do you think the other candidates, other than Jeb Bush and John Kasich, who went out of their way to say this is a crazy idea, the other candidates zipped the lip?
Well, that's a good question.
Starting with Marco Rubio.
Right. I wonder about Rubio because, the way that he put it coming out of the third debate was that he got Bush in his trap, right? He caught him. It worked.
Yeah, right.
Beautiful. And then the credit card thing comes out, and they use the same trap language again. Hey, we got you in our trap. But I wonder how often you can use it. You can lay down traps, and whether they are traps. At some point as you're rising, and Ben Carson has seen this. You get hit a little bit harder from the candidates. You certainly get checked out a lot closer by us. Print, radio, broadcast. We all, online. We all come in. And we do our we do our vetting. We do our job.
Got to expect it.
So Rubio, for his part, is just here. He's just shy of the front runner.
Yeah.
So is he rising? Is he falling? Is he static? And does he want to incur that wrath?
And he can expect a lot more attention too.
That's all for americasdemocrats.org. Thank you to all who made today's show possible. Michael Higginbotham, Andre Shashaty, and the entire Bill Press team. And thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, please get involved in our efforts to keep this show going and to elect Democrats who are bringing the party back to its roots. Go to americasdemocrats.org and click on Donate at the top of the page. And be sure to find 21st Century Democrats on Facebook. For americasdemocrats.org, I'm your host, Jim Cuddy. We want you to sit back and listen, but we need you to stand up and fight. Join us, support the show, and help elect Democrats who will stand up for democratic principles with your contribution today. Go to americasdemocrats.org and click on Donate.